Hello, welcome. My name is Ethan Sanford and I am the Industrial Arts Department Chair and Woodshop teacher at Sequoia High School. And in the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'd like to give you an overview of the woodworking program and the classes we offer. I especially focus on the beginning Wood 1 class that we offer to ninth graders. We also offer a year-long Wood 2 and a year-long Wood 3 class. So up to 3 years you can take woodshop, and I have had students take a 4th year as an independent study. So the woodshop that we have is very well equipped. The photos that you will be seeing are not of Sequoia's woodshop, and the projects and tools that you see will not be of our facility. That said, the pictures will represent the types of projects and very much the types of tools that we have at the woodshop. So a ninth grader can enroll in Wood 1. It counts as its official name is CTE Wood 1, is a CTE graduation requirement. It fulfills that requirement. It's a year-long class, so 2 semesters, and the goal of the class is to first and foremost kindle an interest and a passion in designing and building. Often students who take woodshop already have an interest, but they have never gained any experience taking a hands-on class. I would say 95+% of my students have never used tools to build a project, and most of them also have not designed projects. A few students have taken a class outside of school, or they have done a STEM class. But other than that, everyone comes in with pretty much no experience. So the goal for me is to provide students with the experience of designing and building the really fundamental skills that go into that. And one of the first skills that go into designing and building is measuring. So the projects, and these are just pictures that hopefully you as an 8th grader, and maybe if you're with your mom and dad or a guardian, when you see these photos, my hope is that you look at them and say, build a curiosity. What are these tools? What do they do? That's interesting. Curiosity is one of the things I really encourage, as well as creativity and artistry in my class. It really, more than anything, kindles a spirit of how do you do that, and then you dig into the details, you ask questions, you explore, and your curiosity leads you to knowledge and some skills. So these are just some pictures that create inspiration for me, and hopefully they do for you as well. So the first thing that we cover in Wood 1 is shop math. It's the language that we use, and it's the way that we design and build things. It's one of the fundamental skills. And what's really required is an understanding of feet, whole inches, and fractions of an inch. We don't use the metric system, so as a result we need to understand the system that is used in the United States. And most people are not yet competent or proficient in their ability to sight read a ruler, so we spent some time developing and becoming comfortable with how to read a ruler, which by itself is a really important skill, but certainly when we're talking about designing and building, it's something that we use all the time. And so developing that skill is our first step. The next step is knowing how to measure and mark. So we use bench rulers and tri-squares and combination squares and T-bevels. All these tools are tools that allow you to take a measurement and then make a mark, and typically that mark is a cut line or a layout line. So knowing how to do that accurately is extremely important. We also learn design concepts and orthographic projection. Orthographic projection is a way of seeing an object and representing it in 2 dimensions. So if you see an object, it has 3 dimensions to it. Even in your head, you can create a image of something in which you see 3 dimensions, a thickness, a width, and a length, or a depth. These are all ways of understanding real world objects, but how do you represent them on a piece of paper? And just as importantly, when you look at a piece of paper and you see an orthographic projection, how do you understand that as a 3-dimensional object? And so we go over the real fundamentals of how to do this and practice that. We also cover one of the first tools we use is a handsaw that is meant for cutting. And this gets into safety. My goal as a teacher is to make sure that not only are students safe for their own well-being, but also the people around them. So I cover how to look out for one another and protocols that will allow us to practice safety before we start using power tools. Also with hand tools, we learn concepts like perpendicular, parallel, crosscut, ripping. These are all ways of cutting material, doing layout and cutting material, and it gets into the medium that we use, which is wood. Some classes use clay for ceramics or acrylic or oil paint for painting. We use wood, and so it's important we understand the fundamentals behind the material. Because these wood comes from trees, we learn about growth rings and grain, density, all the things that make up the different characteristics of wood as a material. And here's an example. For example, there's dimensional lumber like studs. If you drive by a construction site and someone's building a house, you'll see a skeleton, a wood skeleton. That's dimensional lumber. In California, it's Douglas fir. That's a type of conifer tree. And there's also hardwoods, which implies harder, more resistant to denting and stronger structurally. So there's softwoods and hardwoods. We learn about the difference between them and how it relates to the functionality of woodworking as well as the beauty of wood as an artistic expression. Wood lathes are one of the first tools that we learn how to use. We're very fortunate in that we have one MIDI lathe. It's not a mini lathe, but a MIDI, which the picture of this young lady using a lathe to make a rolling pin, that is a MIDI lathe. We have one for every 2 people, and we cover how to do spindle turning, and in our advanced class we do bowl turning. One of the projects we make and with a lathe is pens. These are pens that are both mechanical pencils as well as pens, and we do that on the lathe using a variety of different tools. So that's one of the first projects students will do in their first year. Students can elect to do an independent project on the lathe. Students who go faster than the class as a whole. My goal is to make sure that students have a long enough runway for them to pursue and go their own pace. So many students design their own rolling pin and create a functional rolling pin that they can use in cooking, that they often either keep for themselves or give as a gift. Another project that's an independent project is a baseball bat. Students learn how to create a baseball bat on the lathe using either a decorative wood, practice wood, or we also have hard rock maple, which is a pro-grade bat material. Bowl turning is for advanced students. Occasionally I'll have a subset of students who are far enough in the curriculum that will actually introduce it in Woods 1, but typically it's done in Woods 2. One of the first stationary power tools that we use is a drill press. And for every single tool that we cover, as a group, we go to the tool, we learn about the safety instructions, how to operate the tool. Students take a safety test. The safety test is on the instructions. They need to get 100%. They're given multiple tries. The goal being that you can't take a safety test get some wrong and then use the equipment, if you don't know all the safety, you're going to be a danger to yourself and the people around you. So the goal is not on giving a punitive test in which you get a grade and that's it. The goal is to thoroughly learn the material for your own safety and the people around you. So we also learned the sliding compound miter saw. Each one of these tools, students, after they pass the safety test, they'll do a demo with me in which they demonstrate how to safely use the tool. And once they do pass the safety test and pass the student demo, then they use the tool with a safety partner in the woodshop throughout the course of their class. Bandsaw. A bandsaw is a very enjoyable tool that has multiple techniques that can be done on it. It can cut curves, cut straight, use a fence to cut straight, use a fence to resaw bandsaw. So there's a fair amount to the bandsaw. It's an enjoyable tool. The joiner is the first tool in a 3-tool, you can consider it 4, tool process that allows you to take a board that is bowed, crooked, checked, twisted, cupped, a board that's not square, and turn it into a square material. So the first step is the joiner, then the planer, and then the table saw. And those 3 tools will make the edges and the faces square to one another, and the last step would be to, on a miter saw, cut off the ends, or using a miter fence on the table saw to cut off the ends, and then your board is perfectly square. Sanders, we cover all these sanders we have in the shop. We have a vertical and horizontal belt sander, an edge sander, oscillating spindle sander, disc sander, and we have a double Y-belt sander as well as class sets of orbital sanders. One of our first projects, other than lathe projects that we do in the woodshop in our Wood 1 class, are cutting boards. All my projects are scalable, and what I mean by that is depending on a student's productivity in class, interest in working outside of class, they can do the simple project, which would be a strip cutting board, but they can also take it a step farther and learn how to do an end grain cutting board, or they can learn how to make a chessboard. And often they'll do the easier project first and then have enough time or work outside of class to do an advanced version of that project. The next project after that is a footstool. All the projects have embedded them learning the techniques that go into them. So for example, if you kind of zoom out a little and look at this footstool, it has the same joinery as a dining room table or a large bench. And so the goal is not only to have students experience the process of making something, but also the engineering and the design that go into projects that they might want to make later on. So that this could be a side table, it could be a coffee table, it could be a dining room table, which we have every year several students make in the advanced class. In addition to required mandatory projects, we have independent projects similar to the baseball bat and the rolling pin on the lathe. We have projects that allow students who are really into the class to come in outside of class. I keep the shop open during lunch. And a hand tool project, a mallet and chisel platter project we call it, is a project in which students learn tool control, they learn grain direction, freehand woodworking, and it's very enjoyable, and students love it because it's a immediate impact in stimulus response kind of a experience, where a lot of projects, they take a lot of individual steps and they involve power tools, which students do like, but hand tools are a way of expressing a certain level of creativity and artistry that students often get into. In addition to all that, we have a program, and this right now in distance learning is a part of the class, but it is also part of the class as extra credit for Wood 1 learning SketchUp. which is a 2D and 3D CAD CAM design program. And that's another way of saying you're learning how to make models instead of on graph paper with a scale and a pencil. You're doing it on a computer by creating lines that represent real objects in 3 dimensions, sometimes in 2, but often in 3. So we have a curriculum that gets into learning 2 and 3D CAD CAM design. We also have at the Woodshop a CNC laser, which is an advanced Wood 2-3 tool, but occasionally we do have Wood 1 students who make the extra effort and come outside of class time to learn this tool at the beginning of the tool and the design process in Wood 1. So the laser, through the process of burning with concentrated light, it can cut through material that's thin, and it also can etch or engrave material. And these are examples: Aztec calendar, and here's an example of gears that were cut out, and also designs that are put on a woodworking project. And lastly, our CNC router. We have, again, for advanced Wood 2, Wood 3, we have a 2 and 3D CAD design it's a program called Aspire by Vectric, and it's a program that does design, but it also does the toolpath G-code that then runs our CNC router. And it's a 10 horsepower spindle that will spin around cutting implements that then will either cut through material or create profiles on materials. So here's an example of a finger jointed box. Here's an example of a guitar body. And it's a really amazing tool that advanced students learn. And that's it. So that is our woodworking program at Sequoia. Hopefully that gives you enough of an overview to see if it would be a good fit